His running ability leads him to become a football star in high school. With his talent, he earns a scholarship to play college football at the University of Alabama. Forrest's ability to run fast opens doors for him that no one ever expected. After college, Forrest joins the U.S. Army and is sent to fight in the Vietnam War. He meets his best friend, Bubba, in the Army, and together, they dream of starting a shrimp business after the war. But tragically, Bubba is killed in combat. Forrest also saves his commanding officer, Lieutenant Dan, who loses his legs and struggles with depression after the war. Despite these hardships, Forrest receives a Medal of Honor for his bravery. After the war, Forrest returns home, but he doesn't forget Bubba's dream. He starts a shrimping business called Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. With some luck and hard work, the business becomes a huge success, making Forrest a millionaire. But throughout his adventures, one person is always on Forrest's mind: his childhood friend, Jenny. Jenny's life is much harder than Forrest's. She grows up in an abusive home and struggles with drug addiction, poor relationships, and bad decisions. Despite this, Forrest always loves her unconditionally. They have a complicated relationship. Jenny drifts in and out of his life, always looking for happiness in the wrong places. At one point, Forrest becomes famous again by running across the country for over 3 years. His epic journey inspires people, and he becomes a symbol of hope. People join him, but Forrest doesn't do it for attention. He just feels like running, another example of how his life follows its own path. Finally, after many years, Jenny returns to Forrest, and they get married. She reveals that they have a son, also named Forrest. But soon after, Jenny dies from an illness, likely related to her troubled past. Forrest is left to raise their son alone, teaching him the same life lessons his own mother taught him. Forrest's life comes full circle as he sends little Forrest off to school, showing that life continues, full of the unexpected twists and turns that make it unique.
Now that you've heard the story, let's dive into some key idioms and famous phrases from Forrest Gump that will help you improve your English. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. This means that life is unpredictable. You never know what will happen, just like you don't know what kind of chocolate is in a box until you taste it. Stupid is as stupid does. Actions speak louder than words. People are judged by what they do, not how smart they are. Forrest uses this to remind people that intelligence is about actions, not just knowledge. Run, Forrest, run! This phrase became famous as a way to tell someone to go fast or escape danger. It's shouted at Forrest when he first learns to run away from bullies, and later, when he's racing on the football field. I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. This phrase shows that love doesn't require intelligence. It's about feelings and understanding someone deeply. Forrest says this to express how much he loves Jenny, despite his challenges. We were like peas and carrots. When Forrest says this about Jenny, he means they were close and fit together perfectly, just like how peas and carrots are often served together in a meal. It's a way of saying two people belong together.
That's the story of Forrest Gump. I hope you enjoy hearing it in simple English, and I hope you learned some new idioms and phrases along the way. This movie is a great way to understand important life lessons while improving your English vocabulary and listening skills.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Fluent Guys for more content like this. Let us know in the comments which part of the story or which phrase you found most helpful. And as always, keep learning and stay fluent, guys. See you in the next video.
There are thousands and thousands of high-rise buildings around the world. But if you look at a list of the tallest 1,000, Richard, how many do you think are in Europe?
Actually, I don't think there are that many in Europe. Okay, I'll say 20.
20? I thought it was much more. Richard, it's only 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So for this week's podcast on English.com, we ask, Why is that? Where are the high-rise buildings? So, Richard, if we go back into the past, where did they all start?
Well, I think the word skyscraper, I think it didn't that originate in America, in New York?
No, Chicago.
Oh, right, okay.
And where are they all now?
I think they're all in Asia. You keep hearing about the tallest building in the world in Asia, so I think that's where they are.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, when you say Asia, we're talking China.
The Middle East.
The Middle East. Okay, so the tallest building is still
Burj
Khalifa, yeah, so that's 828 metres. That's still the highest. Okay, so we stay in Europe, Richard. Let's look at the top 10 in Europe. Now, interesting, 8 of those are in the same country.
It's got to be London, surely.
No!
Wow, okay. Where's that?
Russia.
Ah.
And 7 of them are in the same city.
So that's Moscow.
Right, and the tallest is actually in St. Petersburg.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The next one is the other two are the UK and Poland.
Yes. Well, I certainly know one of the tallest is the Shard, of course. We did a podcast on it, didn't we, in London?
Yeah, you see, that's 309 metres. And at the time, it was quite a big thing, but it's small.
Well, it's not small, but maybe in comparison to some of the other buildings.
So why do you think that is, Richard?
Well, I think European cities are very old, aren't they? So they're cramped. There's small roads. I think it's quite difficult to build a tall building in Europe.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is old, Richard. And I think Europe is much more about protecting the past, whereas the States or Asia is all about the future.
Yes, in Europe it's tradition, isn't it, and heritage.
Yeah, because even the buildings that got knocked down during the Second World War, they didn't clear the way and put in a modern building. You take St. Pancras railway station, they rebuilt it in the old style.
Like they're doing with Notre Dame Cathedral.
Exactly. Now, in Europe, there are some very, very strict building regulations, all about protecting the cultural heritage. In Italy, Richard, in central Rome, no building can be taller than...
The Colosseum, maybe? That's quite tall in itself.
St. Peter's Basilica.
Oh, yes.
Which
yes.
is only 136 metres. In Greece, in Athens, no building can block the view of...
The Parthenon.
Exactly, which is why the maximum height is 12 stories.
Wow.
In Paris, they decided in 1973 that the tallest building in central Paris will be 37 metres.
Wow.
London, Richard.
That's changed recently. Lots of skyscrapers now.
But actually, it could be many more. Did you know that there are protected views in London?
St Paul's Cathedral.
There are 8 places in London where you have to be able to see St Paul's Cathedral. And you're not allowed to put any building in front of it to block it.
Wow. Well, I think that's a good thing. Very good thing. New skyscrapers, I'm not keen. They're all a bit boring, I think. Glass, steel, not for me. Many people think because we're living in the countryside that our life is all peace and quiet. But that is certainly not the case.
Yeah, so for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about sound.
Or rather noise.
Yeah, okay, so what's the difference?
Well, I suppose sound is anything and everything we can hear, but noise is a sound we don't like, an unpleasant sound.
Yeah, okay, so we're used to this. We're used to sitting down to dinner, aren't we? Only for the neighbour to start cutting the grass, for example.
Big noise.
But in France, Richard, city folk who have moved to the countryside hate the noise so much that they have actually taken farmers to court.
That's ridiculous. What are they complaining about?
So actually, they were complaining because they're no longer allowed to take their issues to the courts, right? But listen to these kinds of complaints. The sounds of cows mooing.
Oh, I like that sound.
Not only that, ducks quacking, geese honking, plus there have been tourists complaining about the sound of the cicadas.
I suppose cicadas are quite loud, aren't they?
They're the loudest insect in the world.
Oh, okay.
Now, there's also the story of an old woman whose new neighbours complained about her frogs croaking because they couldn't sleep at night. 2 policemen turned up and said there had been a complaint from the neighbours because the croaking was so loud and they couldn't sleep.
So they arrested the frogs, did they?
I don't know. I can't. Good luck with trying to catch those. And then there's a couple who took a woman to court because of her cockerel crowing at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh dear. I suppose also a lot of these noises seem much louder at night when everything else is so quiet. But now you're saying they can't complain.
No, they can't. I mean, the government were just fed up with the courts being clogged up by, complaints of the sound of mooing or church bells ringing, so they put a stop to it.
Well, I can imagine going and speaking to the neighbour. Although how can they stop a cow from mooing is beyond me. But to take the trouble to go to court about this seems absolutely ridiculous.
I know.
And surely, after a while, you get used to it. I remember when I lived in Cairo, that the sound at dawn of the muezzin calling the people to prayer. It woke me for the first couple of days, and then I simply got used to it.
I know, exactly. And it's expensive too. I don't think any of the cases were successful.
Yes, well, we may not like the sound of the tractors or the sound of our neighbours cutting the grass, but the cicadas singing, for us, it's the sound of summer.
Richard really likes astronomy. So for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about the night sky. So Richard, when did you start looking at the stars?
I think I was about 9 or 10. I was amazed looking at the sky with thousands of twinkling stars, millions and millions of miles away.
Okay, so constellations, Richard.
Yes, they're simply collections of stars. In the past, people all over the world saw shapes, people, animals, etc. in the stars, and the ones we know today are the ones the Romans used.
Yeah, okay, so I know the Great Bear.
Yes, it's the Roman name Ursa Major. Other famous ones like the Hunter, which is...
Orion?
Orion, correct, yes. There are loads and loads.
Okay, so what's the best thing to look for as a beginner?
I think it's always good to look for the planets.
The planets?
Yes, the planets. Well, obviously you know where the sun and the moon are. They rise in the east and set in the west. Well, the planets follow the same path.
Oh, they do the same thing?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, right.
That's one thing. And also, the planets are brighter than the stars, generally. Even in a big city, you can see the planets. For instance, Venus is often called the evening star or the morning star because it stays quite close to the sun and is very bright.
Okay, so you're saying in the evening it's in the west then, like the sun?
It just follows the sun down, yes.
Right, okay.
And also, remember that stars twinkle but planets don't.
Why is that?
I won't go into details. I think it's because they are much closer than the stars.
Okay. So, Richard, you are looking at the night sky, and I know you have a telescope. Do you have any special moments?
Well, yes. It was actually when I got my first telescope. I think I was about 11 or 12, and it was only a very small telescope, a very cheap telescope, not very powerful, but I was completely blown away when I first saw Saturn.
Saturn?
Yes. I could actually see it as a tiny circle with those rings.
The rings of Saturn.
Absolutely amazing. And I still think That's the best thing to see.
The Olympics in Paris are here. Actually, Richard, how many weeks do you think the Olympics are on for?
Well, loads of events. It must be a month.
I know. I was surprised. It's 2 weeks and 2 days.
2 weeks?
I know, very quick. Okay, but for this week's podcast on English.com, I'm asking Richard 8 questions about Paris 24.
Right.
Where do you think the opening ceremony is held? It's in Paris.
It must be the Stade de France.
Aha. For the first time, it's not going to be in a stadium. It's going to be along the river.
Oh, that's nice.
I know. You mentioned the Stade de France, the running track.
Yes.
For the Olympics, what colour is the track?
It's normally red. So I'll say, well, you asked the question, so therefore it's not red, blue.
It's going to be purple. I've no idea why. There is surfing.
Yes,
Where is that taking place?
I know this.
Oh, yes,
Tahiti.
I know. That it's the furthest away event ever.
But it is French, you see, in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. What is breaking?
Break dancing
Yeah, it's making its Olympic debut.
this year.
Breakdancing. Is it a sport?
I would say no.
There are 10,500 athletes at the Games.
Right, okay.
What percentage do you think are men?
I know that Britain is sending more women than men. So I'd say 50%.
Well, you say that. That is correct, right? But actually, it's the first time ever there have been equal numbers of men and women taking part.
Wow. Good.
What is the mascot?
The mascot, surely France, a cockerel.
No, it's a hat.
A beret.
Well, I think it's pronounced a frige. It's the beret hat thing that was worn during the French Revolution. And apparently it represents freedom, identity, and spirit.
Okay, fair enough.
Every medal contains what metal?
Well, I'm tempted to say gold, but I don't think so. I'll say bronze.
Paris,
Yes.
the Eiffel Tower,
Yes. I've no clue what metal is in the Eiffel Tower.
iron.
Iron, of course.
Every time they make an improvement on the tower, they keep the old metal.
So it will be rust then.
Last question. This is the third time that Paris hosts the Olympics. Which other city has held it 3 times?
London.
Well done. Anyway, it starts Friday. No, it starts Saturday. Looking forward to it.
Can't wait. Online shopping has exploded. There are more online shoppers, more money spent, and more things to buy over the internet than ever before.
Yeah, which means there is a lot of money to be made. So for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about dark patterns. So what do we mean by dark patterns?
Yes, basically, these are the techniques that websites use to trick people into doing something, in particular, buying something online. I mean, they're advertising tools or apps which encourage customers, especially, to buy more things and buy them faster.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about some examples, Richard. Number one, the countdown timer.
Yes, yes. At the top of the page, you'll see a banner saying limited time offer, ends in a day or something like that.
Well, it's a digital clock, isn't there, which is ticking down.
Exactly. It's counting down the days or hours that the so-called offer ends.
Yeah, and it's not always clear what the offer is either.
Yes, people are tricked into buying something because there's this sense that if they don't buy it, they'll lose out.
Okay, and linked to that, Richard, the other trick is the low stock banner.
Yes, this is information that's flashed up which says they've only got 3 left in stock or 1 item left. Buy now.
As well as that, Richard, you also get that thing that comes up which gives you the information about other consumers. I mean, for example, how many people have viewed the item, how many have added the item to their cart, and how many have bought it already. Plus, of course, how many people are looking at it right now. The app that you can buy is actually called Urgency, and it says on their website, these numbers can either be real or random, depending on your preferences.
So those numbers, they're all made up then?
They're made up. They can be made up.
Very dodgy.
I know.
There's also the ratings and reviews.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, it's the reviews which persuade people more than the ratings. I think people believe them, you see. So an item with 4 stars and only 6 reviews sells less than an item with 3.5 stars, say, and 10,000 reviews. People want to buy things which are popular. And of course, fake reviews are a big problem.
Yeah, now you say fake, Richard. So the big question is this all legal?
The short answer is sort of.
Right.
It is illegal to make a false discount, i.e. say something is 35% cheaper than normal when it's not. But although a lot of these techniques are dishonest, most of them are not actually against the law.
I mean, so if you say you only have 1 item in stock when in fact you have a lot more, that's not illegal to say that.
Well, I think that they can get away with it. That's the problem, yes.
I suppose that's why it's called dark patterns. They're tricks.
They are tricks, but everybody is using them, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the next time you are online shopping and you see an item which has a time limit ticking away for a special offer,
or there's only 1 left and 2 people are looking at it right now,
and it has lots of fantastic 5-star reviews, step away.
Sleep on it. It will be there tomorrow.
Yesterday we went out for the night to our local town.
Yes, this time of the year there is a large annual fair with lots of things to see and do.
Yeah, and what we liked the most was the traditional customs that you can see. And these customs are being kept alive by the young as well as the old.
Yes, and so for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about local customs.
Okay, so what do we mean?
Well, I suppose when you're there, the most noticeable thing is the music. Many of the local areas have their own bands. Drumming bands are very popular.
Yeah, and they're so loud. They must be deaf. There are some really young children playing various sized drums. You know, I have my fingers in my ears when they march past.
Me too, yes. And also accordions are very popular.
Not our favourite.
Certainly not mine. And again, the young and the old are playing together.
And then there's lots of singing of traditional folk songs.
And if we talk about the music, we must also mention the dancing. Lots of swirling of skirts and clapping. And often the people who are watching, they also join in.
Yeah, that's because everybody knows the steps. I wonder if they're taught in school or perhaps parents pass on the dance steps.
And we mentioned the skirts, didn't we? So, of course, we must also talk about the colourful traditional costumes to be seen. And it's interesting, although Portugal is a small country, each region has its own unique designs.
Yeah, many of the garments, they're handmade, aren't they? And richly embroidered with bright colours. They look lovely.
So it's obvious that these traditions are alive and well, certainly in this part of Portugal, and it got us wondering what kind of customs like these are in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, we are quite famous, I think, for our traditions, but not so much with costumes and dancing. We have Morris dancing.
That's true.
But yeah, and they wear a particular costume, but there are no regional costumes or dances.
There's no national dress either for England. I mean, the Welsh have a national dress and the Scots, but not the English. Different parts of the country don't seem to celebrate their own customs, certainly not with clothes or with dancing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because you can certainly see that in Spain, or further afield, India.
Yes, each region has its own dance, its own costume. They're all very different.
But perhaps we're wrong. Do you live in the UK and seen some local traditions?
Or do you live in another country with interesting regional customs?
Yeah, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
For this week's podcast in English.com, we're talking about something that everyone, I think, does, and that is leaving home.
Yeah, going out in the big wide world. And things we learn when we do leave home.
Yes. Now, of course, everybody's experience is different, but I think one of the first things is learning about money, how to use it, save it, spend it, etc. And I certainly remember the first thing I did was, opening my first bank account.
Yeah, I remember that. I felt very grown up.
Yes, I didn't feel grown up about paying bills for the first time, the rent, the electricity.
Yeah, budgeting, Richard. Budgeting for food and clothing, making sure you don't go overdrawn. I mean, all of those things to learn.
Yes, and talking about the rent, finding and choosing somewhere to live is probably the biggest and hardest thing.
Yeah, I think nowadays too, finding affordable accommodation is getting harder and harder for young people, including students going to university. Now, I stayed in college, so that was all provided, food and accommodation, fantastic. Whereas I lived in a bedsit, first of all, tiny little room, hated it. And then I later shared a house with 7 other students.
Wow. After I left university, then I had to get a flat, and I shared it with 2 other...
men?
Well, obviously, the problem was one of these guys, he caused all of the mess, and he did none of the clearing up.
It's a big thing, isn't it? It can really affect your whole life.
And it can affect your friendship as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now, another thing people learn to do when leaving home, Richard, is learning how to cook. I couldn't cook at all when I left home. I couldn't even boil an egg. But you're a bit better than me.
Yes, I used to look after myself as a child, actually. I used to cook my own meals, so that wasn't a problem for me.
Yeah, I found that a big learning curve. I do think nowadays it's easier to buy ready-prepared meals, fast food, takeaways. But I think when we were younger, that was more difficult.
Yes.
We also talked about budgeting for clothes, Richard, but there's also washing them, of course. Now, I never had a washing machine. Everyone went to the laundrette. When I lived in London, there was one across the street, which was very handy.
Yes, in the 1980s, there were around 12,500 laundrettes in the UK. But now there are fewer than 3,000.
Yeah, I mean, practically everyone has their own washing machine now. So presumably, rented flats, they all have them too?
Yes, I did hear a few stories, though, of people taking their clothes home for their mums to wash.
And without your mum or parent or guardian telling you what to do when, you now have the freedom to organise your own time. But that's something to learn, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, you can stay out all night if you want, but is that a good thing? Yes, definitely balancing work or study life with a social life is something that you have to learn. So how about you, the listener? What was leaving home like for you?
And if you're going to leave home, are you looking forward to that?
Or not? We'd love to hear from you.
One of the things we like to do is walk along the River Thames.
Yeah, the Thames has the longest riverside walk in Europe. And for this week's podcast on English.com, I'm asking Richard some questions about the famous river.
Okay, fire away, Jackie.
Is it the longest river in the UK?
No, I think the Avon is longer.
The River Severn is the
The
longest.
Severn, that's the one I was thinking of, sorry.
Yeah, 220 miles, where the Thames is 215 miles. The Thames River, in some parts, has another name. What is it?
Isis. It's
Yeah.
called Isis in Oxford.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
No. Now, as we know, the river has loads and loads of bridges, over 200. How many tunnels does it have?
I know it has at least 2 tunnels, probably 3 tunnels. There's a walking, you can walk underneath the Thames. I know that in London. And there's the London Underground Tunnel.
No, but hold on, this is about the whole river, Richard, not just in London. The River
right.
Thames.
Oh, I don't know if it's got any tunnels outside London.
27.
Wow, wow.
I know. Yeah, I was surprised by that. How many bridges in central London, the London bridges, do you know how many there are?
There must be at least 5.
21. Okay, the original London Bridge was the first bridge to cross the Thames. It was built in 50 AD. Who built it?
The Romans.
And what material did they use? Wood, stone, or concrete?
I think that's a trick question. Concrete.
It's wood. Right. Built in 1894, Tower Bridge is the most famous. As you know, it opens up to let the tall boats go through. How often does it open on average every day?
Twice.
How do you know that?
Guess.
That was a guess. Okay. Now, any boat or ship which is taller than 9 metres, 30 feet, has to ask for the bridge to be raised. How much do you think the boats pay to raise the bridge?
I think a lot. I think it's a lot of money. £500.
It's free. Which is the newest bridge in London?
The Millennium Bridge.
The date?
It wasn't built in 2000. I think it was a couple of years later.
2002. The longest bridge?
Blackfriars Bridge.
It's Waterloo Bridge.
Right.
Okay, now this is the funniest bit about the river, right, Richard? In 1251, the King of Norway gave King Henry III an animal as a present. Now, the animal was kept in the Tower of London, but sometimes, when it was very hot, it was allowed to swim in the river. Do you know what the animal was?
From Norway, a stag.
It's a polar bear.
Oh, goodness. Well, I didn't get very many of them right, did I? But I will say that it's one of the best things to do in London, simply walking along the banks of the River Thames.
And in 2024, it's the Chinese Year of the Dragon.
Yes, but for this week's podcast on English.com, we're asking, what is a dragon? I mean, it's not a real animal, is it?
No, it's not real. It's a mythical creature that appears in stories. It's made up of different animals, so the body is...
A lizard. A large lizard with wings. I think bat wings.
Richard, that is a dragon, but not a Chinese dragon. You're thinking of the Welsh dragon.
Yes, the Welsh dragon. There's a red dragon on the Welsh flag.
Or you're thinking of St. George and the dragon. Now, these are Western dragons.
Right, okay, so the Chinese dragon is different then.
Yeah, okay, think about Chinese dragon dancers. There's something very different.
No wings. They don't have any wings.
Yeah, and it's more of a snake, I think, than a lizard.
But does it breathe fire? Western dragons always have fire coming out of their mouths.
I don't know. I don't think so. Also, in the West, dragons are evil, aren't they? But that's not the case in the East.
Yes. And also, it's interesting that the dragon is the only mythical creature in the Chinese zodiac. The others are all real.
Yeah. Now, there are, of course, other mythical creatures. For example, unicorn. What is a unicorn?
Yes, the unicorn. Now, that's a white horse.
Or sometimes a goat-like animal.
With a single long straight horn.
Yeah. Now, one difference between the unicorn and the dragon is that people did think that unicorns were real, including Marco Polo. He said he saw one.
Really?
Yeah. Now, he said they were ugly, looked like elephants, and had a short single horn. They liked being in the mud.
That sounds like a rhinoceros.
Exactly. Now, we said there's a dragon on the Welsh flag. Did you know, Richard, that the unicorn is the national animal of Scotland?
I didn't know, not at all.
I know. Okay. What's the national animal of England?
England.
Think about the football team.
The lion.
So in the past, people thought that the unicorn was the enemy of the lion. So the Scots chose the unicorn because the English had the lion.
No, he didn't like the English.
No. And if you remember, there's this children's rhyme.
The lion and the unicorn fighting for the crown. I didn't understand what that was all about.
Yeah, so when England and Scotland joined together, the symbols, the lion and the unicorn, joined together too, sharing the crown.
Oh, right, okay, that's interesting.
It is, isn't it?
So, these are not real animals, but they're very interesting. Which is your favourite mythical creature?
The largest internet company worldwide is Alphabet, the parent company of Google, which started in 1998.
Yes, and number 2 is Amazon, which started in 1994. Next up is Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. Now, they started in 2004. However, for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about the company that sits in 12th place.
You're right. Now, the difference between this company and all the others, we think, is that it affects the lives of those who don't use it.
Now, can you explain what you mean by that, Jackie?
Well, okay. It doesn't make any difference to me personally if you or our friends or family or our neighbours use any of these companies, one you mentioned, right? Or if they watch Netflix or use Booking.com or Uber.
Right, okay.
But with this company, it could actually make a difference to us and not necessarily a positive one.
All right, okay. I think we should start at the beginning.
Yeah, okay. Right, back in 2007, 3 guys realised they could make a bit of money on the side, a bit of extra. They lived in San Francisco, where finding a room for a short stay was both difficult and expensive for young people.
Yes, Now I think listeners can start guessing who you're talking about now, can't they?
Yeah, so they put a blow-up mattress on the floor of their spare room and offered bed and breakfast.
It was very popular.
It was, and the guys saw a business opportunity. A year later, they decided to start an online website that allowed others to rent out a spare room.
And they called it
airbedandbreakfast.com.
So the air bit comes from the blow-up mattress
I
idea.
know, yeah.
Airbnb.
I know. To say that it was a successful idea, Richard, is putting it mildly, isn't it? The company, now known as Airbnb, of course, is worth how much?
$90 billion. So they now earn loads of money. But the company has also changed a lot, hasn't it? They're not just renting out spare rooms now, are they?
No, indeed. In fact, already by 2009, the website included listings for entire properties, not just sharing.
Yes, and that's where the problem is.
Yeah, exactly. The backlash has come from two areas: the hotel industry and from housing associations.
Yes, the hotels, they worry about losing their customers, and also rents have increased in popular areas where people rent out houses.
Yeah, landlords. The problem is that landlords make more money from renting out their flats on for short-term rentals rather than to local people who actually want to live there. But interesting, Richard, there are places where Airbnb is banned.
Yes, they include areas of Amsterdam, Vienna, Madrid, Miami, and West New York.
Okay, so how could we be affected then?
Well, if our neighbours rented out their house, for instance...
A big house,
and people rented it just to have a party, well, that would be really bad. There are so many interesting things to see in London.
Yeah, and some of the most famous tourist attractions have over 5 million visitors a year.
Now, we both lived in London and have, of course, seen many of these places. However, for this week's podcast on English.com, we're talking about the attractions we didn't visit when we lived there.
Yeah, actually, Richard, do you know which is the most visited place?
The most visited attraction in London?
Yeah.
It's got to be surely the Tower of London?
No, it's the British Museum.
Ah, okay, yes.
Almost 6 million visitors.
Right, I can understand that. It's a great place. So what about places we didn't visit? Jackie, what famous place did you not visit?
The answer to that, Richard, is St. Paul's Cathedral.
Oh, wow, okay.
Well, I had a friend over, we were walking around, and we both said, let's go into the cathedral, let's visit St. Paul's Cathedral.
It is an amazing building, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I did see it from the outside, so we started to make our way into the cathedral, and what did I discover?
You have to pay to get in.
And it was, I can't remember, but it was just really, really expensive. And at that time, it was just too much for me, so I didn't go in.
Oh, that's a shame.
What I did see, Richard, is how much it costs now to get in. What do you think it costs?
I don't know. If it was too expensive, I don't know, £20?
25 quid.
Ooh, that's a lot to go into a cathedral.
I know. So it's a shame. Maybe another time. What about you, Richard? What place did you not visit when you lived there?
Well, another one that's one of the most popular places, I believe, is Madame Tussauds Wax Museum.
Did you not go?
I've never been.
Wow. So why not?
There was one time where I was thinking of going.
Right.
And I got there, but I just thought that there was a huge queue. And at the end of the day, I really just didn't think it was worth it. I really don't like queuing anyway. So I just thought, no.
Actually, interesting, Richard. Now you're not allowed to go there and just buy a ticket.
Oh, really?
No, you have to book online.
Okay.
And when I was doing research for this, I discovered that most of the places now you have to book online to get there.
Funny you should say that. Last time I went to London, I went to see the National Gallery, which was fantastic. And again, it's free, but you have to book online, but there was no queue, and I just walked straight in. Very easy. Well worth it.
It's funny because you talked about going to see the National Gallery.
Yes.
When you visited London recently.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, together as a couple, we've seen the London Eye and the Houses of Parliament.
Yes, and part of the Houses of Parliament was Westminster Hall.
And I was thinking, we went to all those places as tourists, really.
Yes. Yeah, well, we hadn't been to London for a long time, had we?
No, so I think that a lot of these, if you live in a place, you tend not to maybe go and see the places that all the tourists go to, and partly because how much money it costs.
True, very true.
So, Richard, is there anywhere else that maybe you haven't seen already, but you would like to?
Well, it's not well, it is a place, but it's also an event. One thing I'd really like to do is to watch Wimbledon, watch the tennis tournament there. That would be fantastic.
Welcome back to Fluent Guys, the podcast where we explore the beauty of the English language through captivating stories. I'm your host, your name, and today, you have a special episode lined up for you, a love story that'll not only tug at your heartstrings, but also help you learn some idioms and phrases along the way.
Little feet that Peter Pan.
Let's dive into our story, Whispers in the Wine. In a small coastal town, to strangers, Lily and Jack found themselves at a quaint little cafe one rainy afternoon. Lily, an aspiring artist, often sought inspiration in the rain, while Jack, a writer, was searching for the right words to describe his feelings. As they both sat alone, a sudden gust of wind blew through the open window, causing Lily's sketches to flutter off the table. Jack instinctively reached out to catch one, and their eyes met. "I guess the wind has a way of bringing people together," Jack said with a smile. Lily laughed and replied, "Or maybe it just blows us in the right direction." They struck up a conversation, sharing dreams and aspirations. Jack learned that Lily's sketches were filled with vibrant colors, depicting the beauty she saw in everyday life. Inspired, he offered, "Why don't you let me write a story to go with your art?" As weeks went by, their collaboration blossomed into something more. They spent evenings painting and writing under the stars, finding joy in each other's company. But as their feelings deepened, Jack feared his words would never be enough to express how much Lily meant to him. One night, with the ocean waves crashing in the background, Jack took a deep breath and confessed, "Lily, you've captured my heart. Without you, my words would fall flat." Lily smiled, her eyes sparkling. "And you've given my art a voice," she replied. "Together, we create magic."
这里数吗？哈。
And with that, they sealed their love with a promise to always inspire each other, no matter where the winds of life would take them.
What a beautiful story. Now, let's break down some idioms and phrases we encountered. The wind has a way of bringing people together. This means that sometimes unexpected circumstances can lead to new friendships or relationships. Blows us in the right direction. This suggests that sometimes life guides us toward what we truly need or want, even if we don't see it at first. Capture my heart. This is a romantic way of saying that someone has fallen in love with you. Words would fall flat. This means that words alone are not enough to convey deep feelings or emotions. Create magic. This phrase refers to the unique and wonderful experiences that happen when people work together creatively or harmoniously.
We hope you enjoy Quispers in the wine and found value in the idioms you discussed. Don't forget to join us next time for another story that will help you improve your English while keeping your heart engaged. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep learning with Fluent Guys.
Welcome to the Daily English Podcast, your go-to place for improving your English every single day. Learning a language can feel challenging, but today I want to inspire you with a story about determination and progress. Before we dive into today's lesson, let me tell you about Sarah, a girl who once believed English was beyond her reach. Sarah had always admired her older sister, Layla, for her flawless English. Growing up in a small village, English seemed like a distant dream to Sarah, who struggled with even the basics. Most of her classmates thought learning English was impossible, but Sarah was determined. One day, while reading a book in her native language, Sarah came across a story about building bridges to cross rivers. It struck her that learning English was just like building a bridge, word by word, sentence by sentence. She realized that she didn't need to rush, she just needed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Sarah started small. She set a goal to learn one new word every day. She'd write it down, say it aloud, and try using it in a sentence. On her walks through the village, she would practice speaking to herself in English, repeating phrases and correcting mistakes. She even labeled objects around her house with their English names: table, mirror, door. After months of persistence, Sarah's vocabulary grew, and so did her confidence. Then one day, she met Mr. Smith, an English traveler passing through her village. He stopped by the small tea shop where Sarah worked part-time. Mr. Smith smiled and asked, "Can I have a cup of tea, please?" Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She smiled back and replied in perfect English, "Of course. Would you like sugar or milk with that?" Mr. Smith, impressed by her fluency, engaged Sarah in a conversation about the village and her dreams. At that moment, Sarah realized that English wasn't just a language, it was a bridge connecting her to people, places, and opportunities she had never imagined. She had crossed her own river of confusion, one word at a time.
So, just like Sarah, remember that learning English is about building your bridge one word, one sentence, and one conversation at a time. The more you practice, the closer you get to crossing that bridge and achieving fluency. Keep practicing, keep believing, and you will succeed. Thank you for joining me today on the Daily English Podcast. If you enjoyed this story and lesson, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for your daily dose of English. See you in the next episode.
Hi there. Welcome back to English Daily Podcast. In today's lesson, we're going to learn some important English expressions and phrases through a story. This story will help you improve your vocabulary, listening skills, and learn how to talk about decision-making in English. Stick around until the end because I'll also explain how to use these expressions in your daily life. Let's dive into the story. Once upon a time in a small town, there was a man named Jack who owned a bakery. Jack's bakery was famous for its delicious bread, cakes, and pastries, and people from nearby towns came just to taste his fresh goods. But one day, Jack was faced with a difficult decision. A large supermarket chain wanted to buy his bakery. They offered Jack a lot of money, more than he had ever seen in his life. If he accepted the offer, he would never have to work another day, but he would have to give up the bakery, which was his life's work. Jack was torn. Should he take the money and retire early, or should he keep running his bakery, which brought him so much joy? He decided to seek advice from his friends. First, Jack visited Sarah, his childhood friend who was a financial advisor. "I think you should sell," Sarah said. "You could invest the money and live comfortably for the rest of your life. Plus, running a bakery is hard work. You deserve a break." Jack nodded but felt uneasy. He then went to see Peter, his longtime friend and fellow business owner. Peter's response was different. "Jack, your bakery is more than just a business. It's part of who you are. If you sell it, you might regret it later." Jack thought deeply about their words. He was still unsure, so he decided to take a walk through the town. As he passed by his bakery, he saw customers laughing and enjoying their food. He realized how much happiness his bakery brought to the community. Jack smiled and finally made his decision. The next morning, Jack declined the offer from the supermarket chain. He knew he wasn't ready to give up something that meant so much to him. He was happy with his choice and felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Jack continued to run his bakery for many more years, always reminding himself that happiness wasn't just about money, but also about doing what you love. In this story, Jack had to make a tough decision, and we learned some useful phrases for talking about decision-making. Let's go over some of them. Faced with a decision. This means having to make a difficult choice. In the story, Jack was faced with the choice of selling his bakery or keeping it. Torn between two options. When someone is torn between choices, they feel unsure about what to do. Jack was torn between selling the bakery and keeping it. Seek advice. This means to ask someone for their opinion or help. Jack sought advice from his friends, Sarah and Peter. Decline an offer. This means to say no to something. Jack declined the offer from the supermarket. A weight lift off your shoulders. This is a common expression that means to feel relieved. Jack felt relieved after making his decision. You can use these expressions when you're talking about your own choices or helping someone else make a decision. That's it for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed the story and learned some useful English expressions along the way. Remember, practice makes perfect, so try to use these phrases in your own conversations. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to English Daily Podcast. See you next time. Welcome to the English Daily Podcast, your go-to source for boosting your English skills every day. We bring you engaging conversations, helpful tips, and real-life stories to make learning English fun and effective. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced learner, we're here to support your journey to fluency. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's episode.
Once upon a time, in the peaceful kingdom of Lyria, there was a princess named Alara. Unlike other royals who spent their days at banquets or feasts, Princess Alara was known for her adventurous spirit. She loved roaming the forests, befriending woodland creatures, and learning the secrets of her kingdom. One day, Alara heard rumors of a dragon that lived deep in the mountain of Brindle's Peak. According to legend, this dragon, once a fierce guardian of ancient magic, had fallen into a deep sleep after a terrible curse was placed upon it. It was said that whoever dared to approach it would vanish, never to be seen again. But Alara was not one to be dissuaded by tales of danger. In fact, she was captivated by the idea of meeting a creature of such legend. So, she took her cloak, packed a bag of berries and bread, and set off towards Brindle's Peak. After a day of trekking through misty forests and climbing steep trails, Alara found herself at the mouth of a great cave hidden beneath a waterfall. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The walls glittered with veins of crystal, casting rainbows onto the cave floor. The air was filled with a warm glow, and she could feel a powerful presence. In the center of the cave lay a magnificent dragon, curled up with scales that shone like emeralds and eyes that glowed like embers. As she stepped closer, one great eye opened, and a deep, gentle voice filled the cave.
"Why have you come here, child of Lyria?" asked the dragon.
Alara's heart was pounding, but she steadied herself and said, "I've come to find you, great dragon. They say you are cursed, but I think you are lonely. I don't believe that you're dangerous, only misunderstood." The dragon studied her with curious eyes, and a low rumble like distant thunder filled the cave. "You are brave, Princess Alara, and your heart is true, but I am indeed cursed. Long ago, I was the guardian of the ancient magic that sustains this land. But a jealous sorcerer, filled with envy, cast a spell upon me. Now I am bound to this cave, neither fully awake nor truly at rest, until someone with a pure heart breaks the spell."
"And how can it be broken?" she asked, determined to help.
The dragon looked away, sadness filling its gaze. "To break my curse, one must give something precious and selfless to the mountain. Only such a gift could restore the balance of magic." Alara thought for a long moment, looking at her small bag of supplies. She had nothing of great value with her, no jewels, no treasures. But she realized that her journey had already brought her to something she could offer, her freedom. She looked at the dragon with compassion in her eyes.
"I will stay here with you," she said, "to be your companion and friend, if that is what it takes."
The dragon's eyes widened, and it shook its great head. "I could not ask such a thing. Your heart is noble, and your life is yours to live. But your offer shows me something I had forgotten. That kindness is the greatest power of all." With her offer made from such sincerity, a golden light began to fill the cave, breaking through the dark enchantment that had imprisoned the dragon for centuries. As the light grew brighter, the dragon let out a triumphant roar, and in a flash, its form began to change. When the light dimmed, standing before Alara was not a dragon, but a young man with eyes like embers and a warm, gentle smile.
The dragon-turned prince bowed to her. "Thank you, Princess Alara. You have broken my curse, and in doing so, restored the ancient magic. My name is Cedric, and I owe you my life."
Alara smiled, her cheeks flushed with joy. Together, they returned to the kingdom, where Cedric's wisdom and Alara's courage became legend. They worked side by side, guiding Lyria into an age of peace and prosperity, with the spirit of the mountain watching over them. And so, the princess and the dragon, now prince, lived happily, bound not by chains or spells, but by a friendship that had saved them both. And whenever travelers climbed the mountain, they could swear they heard the echoes of a dragon's gentle roar, watching over the kingdom forevermore, and they all lived happily ever after.
breaking down some idioms and phrases of the story.
Break the ice, meaning to initiate conversation in a way that makes people feel more comfortable, especially in a group or formal setting. Example, he told a funny story to break the ice before the meeting started. Piece of cake, meaning something that is very easy to do. Example, don't worry about the exam, it'll be a piece of cake. Hit the nail on the head, meaning to be exactly right about something, to perfectly describe or identify a situation. Example, you really hit the nail on the head with your analysis of the problem. Under the weather, meaning feeling slightly ill or unwell. Example, I won't be able to attend the meeting. I'm feeling a bit under the weather. Explanation, this phrase is used when someone isn't feeling their best, usually due to minor illness or fatigue. Bite the bullet, meaning to force yourself to do something unpleasant or difficult. Example, I didn't want to work on the weekend, but I had to bite the bullet to meet the deadline. Explanation, originating from when soldiers would bite on a bullet during medical procedures, this phrase now means to endure something hard with determination. Costs an arm and a leg, meaning something very expensive. Example, the concert tickets cost an arm and a leg, but it was worth it. Explanation, this idiom is used when describing something with a high price, often something desirable or hard to get. Spill the beans, meaning to reveal secret information, usually by accident. Example, she spilled the beans about the new project before it was announced. Explanation, this phrase is similar to let the cat out of the bag and usually implies that the reveal was unintentional. Hit the sack, meaning to go to bed or go to sleep. Example, I'm exhausted. I think I'll hit the sack. Explanation, this is a casual way to say you're going to sleep, often used when someone is very tired. Caught red-handed, meaning to catch someone in the act of doing something wrong. Example, the thief was caught red-handed with the stolen goods. Explanation, this idiom likely comes from being caught with blood on one's hands and now refers to being caught in the middle of any wrongdoing.
Thank you for tuning in to the English Daily Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who want to improve their English. Remember, practice makes perfect, so keep listening, keep practicing, and keep growing. Catch you in the next episode. Happy learning!
Welcome back to the English Daily Podcast, where we explore fascinating stories behind the words and phrases we use every day. I'm your host, Liv Morgan, and today, we're diving into the origins of two words that are not only common in English but have traveled across the globe: orange and tea. We'll uncover how these words evolved through trade routes, cultures, and languages. Stay tuned as we journey through history, exploring how these everyday words came to be.
Podcastandenglish.com, we're talking about the origins of two very common English words.
Yeah. So, in general, the word for the fruit orange has three forms, variations of those forms. So you have either the word orange, Portugal, or applesin.
All right, Jackie. So where does the actual fruit come from then?
Oranges, like all citrus fruits, come from Asia, South China, North India. And it was the Arabs who were the first to trade, to import the oranges into Europe. And the Arabic word for orange is naranj.
Okay, so it's arancia in Italian, naranja, is it? Laranja in Spanish, orange in French, and of course, orange in English.
Exactly. No, but then what's interesting is the Portuguese, also big explorers and merchants, they brought the sweet orange to Europe. So many languages call the fruit after them. So in Turkish, it's portocalo.
Portocalo?
Right? In Bulgarian, it's portakal, right? And in Arabic, for the sweet orange, it's bortukal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Wow. But you also mentioned applesin.
Yes, that simply means apple from China, and it's used in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Russia.
Now, I've got a drink that only, as far as I'm aware, has two words.
Right.
It's tea or cha, possibly chai as well.
Yeah, variations of those words, right?
And again, it's to do with the origin of the word and the trade routes.
Right.
Okay, so obviously tea again comes from the Far East and China. Both words actually come from the Chinese, but obviously, as you know, they've got different dialects. Now, chai is produced in one dialect, and that one came through the Silk Road, okay, through the land routes to Russia.
Through Central Asia, then?
Central Asia to Russia and Eastern Europe, so they all say chai.
Okay.
But the Brits, of course, we call it tea, and that comes from the Dutch. And they got it from the coast of China, from South China, where their dialect, they used the word tea or tea.
Okay, so what route did the Dutch take then?
Well, there was the sea route through Indonesia, India, Southern Africa, and Europe.
Okay, so that's why they all say tea there.
Indeed, and that's why we say tea in most of Europe.
Why is it, therefore, here in Portugal, it's an exception? They don't say tea.
They say cha. Because obviously the Portuguese were great traders as well, and they got their tea or chai from Macau, where they used the word cha.
It's interesting, isn't it, Richard? Because people complain that nowadays globalization is a new concept and everything is becoming very similar throughout the world. But this is such a good example of two words, the tea or the cha, which nearly everyone uses, and that's because hundreds of years ago, the goods were either spread overland or traded by seafaring Europeans.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I do think there is one word which everyone uses throughout the world.
Ah, yes.
Well, I've certainly never been to a country where it was not used, the word taxi.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the English Daily Podcast, where we explored the rich history behind the words orange and tea. Before we go, let's take a moment to break down some interesting idioms and expressions connected to these words.
First, the phrase "a bitter pill to swallow"
can be linked to the tea drinking culture. Tea, especially green tea, was originally quite bitter in taste, and this idiom refers to something unpleasant or difficult to accept, much like drinking unsweetened tea might have been for some.
Next, spill the tea
is a modern expression that means to gossip or reveal secrets. It shows how tea has become a social activity associated with sharing stories or juicy details, just like sitting down for a chat over a cup of tea.
4. Orange.
We often hear the expression to compare apples and oranges, which means to compare to very different things. This reflects how oranges, though part of the citrus family, are distinct from apples, making any comparison between them unreasonable or unfair.
And finally, the phrase, "not my cup of tea,"
is a classic English idiom meaning something that is not to someone's liking. Just like different people prefer different types of tea, not everything suits everyone's taste.
I hope these phrases add a little extra flavor to your English vocabulary. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'm Liv Morgan, and this is the English Daily Podcast, where every word has a story.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the magical story of Beauty and the Beast. This timeless tale isn't just about enchantments and castles. It's about finding true beauty and kindness within. So, as we journey through Belle's adventure with the Beast, keep an ear out for some interesting expressions and idioms we'll explore at the end.
Once upon a time, there was a wealthy merchant who had 3 daughters. The youngest, Belle, was beautiful, intelligent, and kind-hearted, unlike her older sisters, who were vain and selfish. Belle enjoyed reading and found happiness in simple pleasures, while her sisters wanted only luxurious things. The merchant adored Belle for her gentle spirit and humility. One day, the merchant lost his entire fortune when his ships were caught in a storm. With nothing left, he and his daughters moved to a small cottage in the countryside, where they had to work hard just to survive. The 2 older sisters complained bitterly about their new life, but Belle accepted her new situation and continued to find joy in her family and books. Months later, the merchant received word that one of his ships had returned safely to port. He was overjoyed, hoping that he could finally recover some of his lost wealth. Before setting out on his journey, he asked each of his daughters what they wanted as a gift. The 2 older sisters asked for fine dresses and jewels, but Belle asked only for a single rose. The merchant set off, and after arriving at the port, he was devastated to find his ship's cargo had already been seized to pay his debts. Saddened and defeated, he began his journey home. Along the way, he became lost in a dark, dense forest. After wandering for hours, he saw a mysterious castle in the distance. Hoping for shelter, he approached the castle and, to his amazement, found that the doors were open and the inside was lit with candles, as if someone was expecting him. The merchant entered and called out, but no one appeared. The castle seemed empty, yet a magnificent feast was laid out on the dining table. He ate heartily, grateful for the unexpected kindness. After his meal, he wandered through the castle's beautiful gardens, where he saw a rose bush blooming with the most beautiful roses. Remembering Belle's request, he picked a single rose to bring back to her. Just then, a terrifying roar echoed through the garden, and a monstrous beast appeared, furious at the merchant's theft. The beast accused him of repaying hospitality with treachery and threatened to kill him. The merchant begged for mercy, explaining that he had only taken the rose as a gift for his daughter. The beast finally agreed to spare his life, but only on one condition: the merchant must return with one of his daughters to take his place at the castle. The merchant reluctantly promised, and the beast allowed him to leave. When the merchant returned home, he tearfully explained the situation to his daughters. The older sisters refused to go, but Belle, knowing it was her request that led to her father's predicament, insisted on going in his place. She bid her family farewell and bravely set off to the beast's castle. Upon her arrival, Belle was met by the beast, who treated her kindly despite his frightening appearance. She soon realized that he was not as cruel as he seemed. The beast gave her freedom to roam the castle and its beautiful grounds and provided her with luxurious rooms, books, and wonderful meals. Over time, Belle grew fond of the beast, who showed her great kindness and understanding. They spent many evenings talking, and Belle was surprised to discover that he had a gentle and thoughtful nature beneath his monstrous appearance. One evening, The Beast asked Belle if she would marry him. She gently declined, explaining that she thought of him as a dear friend, not as a husband. Though disappointed, the Beast respected her answer and continued to treat her with kindness. He gave her a magic mirror that would allow her to see her family whenever she wished. One day, Belle saw in the mirror that her father was gravely ill. She begged the Beast to let her visit her family, and he reluctantly agreed, though he asked her to return after 1 week. Belle returned home, and her father's health improved greatly upon seeing her. Her sisters, jealous of Belle's beautiful clothes and tales of the castle, tried to convince her to stay longer, hoping that the Beast would grow angry and punish her. Moved by her father's love, Belle stayed longer than promised, forgetting about the Beast's loneliness. One night, Belle had a terrible dream in which she saw the Beast lying in the castle garden, dying from heartbreak. She awoke, realizing that she loved him and that he truly needed her. In a panic, Belle returned to the castle as fast as she could. She found the Beast lying motionless in the garden, just as she had seen in her dream. With tears streaming down her face, Belle begged him to live, confessing that she loved him. At that moment, a magical transformation occurred. The Beast's monstrous form melted away, revealing a handsome prince. The castle and its surroundings were also transformed, regaining their former beauty. The prince explained that he had been cursed by an enchantress for his selfishness and arrogance, and only true love could break the spell. Belle's love had saved him. Overjoyed, Belle and the prince returned to her family to share the news and bring them to live at the castle. The older sisters, now humbled by Belle's kindness and bravery, realized the importance of love and humility. Belle and the prince were married and lived happily ever after, ruling the kingdom with wisdom and compassion. And Belle's love story with the Beast became a cherished tale, teaching generations about the value of inner beauty, kindness, and the transformative power of love.
Explanation of idioms and phrases. Let's break down a few key phrases and idioms from our story. Lost his fortune. This means to lose all or a large amount of one's wealth or money. In the story, the merchant lost his fortune when his ships were damaged, leaving him in financial ruin. Found himself lost. This phrase is used when someone realizes they're in an unexpected or confusing situation. For instance, the merchant found himself lost in the dark forest, meaning he was in a place he didn't recognize or know how to escape from. To be left in despair, despair refers to a feeling of complete hopelessness. When Belle didn't return, the Beast was left in despair, deeply saddened and feeling hopeless without her. To break the spell here, it's both literal and idiomatic. In fairy tales, spells are broken by true love or bravery, but this phrase is often used to mean ending a difficult or challenging situation. Belle's true love broke the spell and transformed the Beast back to his original form. Lived happily ever after. This phrase is commonly used at the end of fairy tales and stories to mean the characters went on to enjoy a joyful life. It's a classic ending line in many tales, symbolizing that everything turned out well for the characters. Thank you for joining us on this enchanting journey through Beauty and the Beast. This tale reminds us that true beauty lies within and that kindness has the power to transform. If you enjoyed the story and our idiom explanations, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories and language tips. Let us know in the comments which idiom or phrase you found most interesting. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and take care. Thanks for tuning into English Daily Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned some useful idioms and expressions to enhance your English skills. Remember, stories aren't just for entertainment, they're powerful tools for language learning. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or practice sentences using the phrases we covered in the comments section below. Until next time, keep practicing, stay curious, and let's make learning English a part of your daily routine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Fluent Guys. Today we have an amazing English learning video for you, featuring one of the most heartwarming and iconic movies of all time, Forrest Gump. If you're learning English, you're going to love this because we'll go over the story of Forrest Gump in simple English, breaking it down with easy-to-understand explanations. Plus, we'll dive into some of the most famous phrases and idioms from the movie, explaining their meaning to help you improve your vocabulary and listening skills. So sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Forrest Gump is born in the small town of Greenbow, Alabama. As a child, Forrest has a low IQ and wears leg braces, which makes him the target of bullying at school. However, despite these challenges, his mother, Mrs. Gump, teaches him important life lessons. One of her most famous sayings is, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." This means life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and you never know what's coming next. Forrest's legs heal, and one day, while running away from bullies, he discovers that he's incredibly fast. His running ability leads him to become a football star in high school. With his talent, he earns a scholarship to play college football at the University of Alabama. Forrest's ability to run fast opens doors for him that no one ever expected. After college, Forrest joins the U.S. Army and is sent to fight in the Vietnam War. He meets his best friend, Bubba, in the Army, and together they dream of starting a shrimp business after the war. But tragically, Bubba is killed in combat. Forrest also saves his commanding officer, Lieutenant Dan, who loses his legs and struggles with depression after the war. Despite these hardships, Forrest receives a Medal of Honor for his bravery. After the war, Forrest returns home, but he doesn't forget Bubba's dream. He starts a shrimping business called Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. With some luck and hard work, the business becomes a huge success, making Forrest a millionaire. But throughout his adventures, one person is always on Forrest's mind: his childhood friend, Jenny. Jenny's life is much harder than Forrest's. She grows up in an abusive home and struggles with drug addiction, poor relationships, and bad decisions. Despite this, Forrest always loves her unconditionally. They have a complicated relationship. Jenny drifts in and out of his life, always looking for happiness in the wrong places. At one point, Forrest becomes famous again by running across the country for over 3 years. His epic journey inspires people, and he becomes a symbol of hope. People join him, but Forrest doesn't do it for attention. He just feels like running, another example of how his life follows its own path. Finally, after many years, Jenny returns to Forrest, and they get married. She reveals that they have a son, also named Forrest. But soon after, Jenny dies from an illness, likely related to her troubled past. Forrest is left to raise their son alone, teaching him the same life lessons his own mother taught him. Forrest's life comes full circle as he sends little Forrest off to school, showing that life continues, full of the unexpected twists and turns that make it unique.
Now that you've heard the story, let's dive into some key idioms and famous phrases from Forrest Gump that will help you improve your English. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. This means that life is unpredictable. You never know what will happen, just like you don't know what kind of chocolate is in a box until you taste it. Stupid is as stupid does. Actions speak louder than words. People are judged by what they do, not how smart they are. Forrest uses this to remind people that intelligence is about actions, not just knowledge. Run, Forrest, run! This phrase became famous as a way to tell someone to go fast or escape danger. It's shouted at Forrest when he first learns to run away from bullies, and later, when he's racing on the football field. I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. This phrase shows that love doesn't require intelligence. It's about feelings and understanding someone deeply. Forrest says this to express how much he loves Jenny, despite his challenges. We were like peas and carrots. When Forrest says this about Jenny, he means they were close and fit together perfectly, just like how peas and carrots are often served together in a meal. It's a way of saying two people belong together.
That's the story of Forrest Gump. I hope you enjoyed hearing it in simple English, and I hope you learned some new idioms and phrases along the way. This movie is a great way to understand important life lessons while improving your English vocabulary and listening skills.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Fluent Guys for more content like this. Let us know in the comments which part of the story or which phrase you found most helpful. And as always, keep learning and stay fluent, guys. See you in the next video.
The Fox and the Rainbow. Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, there lived a small, curious fox named Finn. Finn had bright orange fur and a fluffy tail that swished behind him as he explored the woods. Every day was an adventure for Finn, but today was special. As he wandered through the forest, a magnificent rainbow arched across the sky. Finn's eyes widened with wonder. "I've heard that rainbows are magical and lead to treasure," he thought. Determined to find the end of the rainbow, Finn decided to follow it. He trotted through the forest, over hills, and across streams. Along the way, he met his friend Bella, the wise old owl. "Where are you going, Finn?" Bella hooted from her perch on a branch. "I'm following the rainbow to find its end," Finn replied excitedly. Bella fluffed her feathers and said, "Rainbows are beautiful, but they don't really have an end. They're just a trick of light." But Finn was undeterred. "I still want to try." So Finn continued his journey. He climbed a tall hill where he met Gary, the gentle giant bear. "Hello, Finn. What brings you here?" Gary asked, noticing Finn's determined face. "I'm following the rainbow," Finn explained. Gary chuckled softly. "Ah, I see. Well, if you're searching for treasure, you might find something special along the way." Finn thanked Gary and pressed on. As he descended the hill, he spotted a patch of wildflowers that glistened in the sunlight, creating their own little rainbow. Finn marveled at their beauty. "Maybe this is the treasure," he thought. He carefully picked a few flowers and continued on his journey. As the sun began to set, Finn arrived at a sparkling lake. The water reflected the colors of the rainbow, creating a breathtaking sight. Finn sat by the lake, feeling content and happy. Suddenly, he noticed something shiny in the water. It was a small golden locket. Finn picked it up and opened it to find a picture of a smiling fox family. This must be someone's lost treasure, Finn realized. He carefully placed the locket in his little bag and headed back home. The next day, Finn showed the locket to Bella and Gary. They helped him find the family who had lost it, and they were overjoyed to be reunited with their cherished keepsake. Finn smiled, knowing that while he didn't find the end of the rainbow, he discovered something even more valuable, helping others and sharing happiness. And so, Finn learned that sometimes the journey itself is the real treasure. He returned to his forest home with a full heart, ready for his next adventure. And whenever a rainbow appeared in the sky, Finn would look at it with a knowing smile, remembering the magical journey that led him to discover the true meaning of treasure. The end.